So I'm going to tell you a story. It's kind of a true story, a little bit. You should at least recognise parts of it that are true. In the beginning, we had dev. We were writing code on our own machines, and this was the last time that we were truly happy. We had a config block of all the stuff that we needed to be defined on dev, and it just worked. Then somebody wanted us to deploy the code to live, and we had to put the code live, which meant we had to duplicate the dev config block, change all the dev configuration to be live configuration, but it worked and everything was good for a little while. We've all been here. Works in dev, doesn't work in live. We realised that it might be an idea to have a staging environment. So we set up a staging environment by duplicating the live environment config block, tweaking the things that needed to be changed, so don't have a content delivery service on the staging box, but everything was good for just a little while. Then we went to a talk or presentations, and we learned about unit tests. And we learned that unit testing was a thing that existed, and we realised that maybe we ought to be running unit tests. And again, we needed to set up a continuous integration environment. So we duplicated the staging environment, edited a few things in the config block, and everything was good for a little while. Then we met the users, and they tried to use our website. And it turns out that most web users just aren't that good at using websites. It's not our fault, and apparently it's not acceptable to just blame users for being stupid. So we needed to do something about that. So we got some UX designers in. And those UX people, they also wanted to do some, they wanted to be able to try out different designs, test them on the users, and so we needed to set up an environment for them. So we duplicated the dev environment, changed a few things in there, just so that it uses different UI, and everything was good for a little while. And Southwest Trains. Does anybody use Southwest Trains?
Yeah.
So two of the people I work with live in Wales. Up until like a week ago, it took them less than an hour to get in. It now takes them approximately 3 days, which is a bit of a problem for productivity. So we realised that maybe we needed to allow remote workers to be able to do development. And a lot of the time you can't expose all the services that you have internally to external developers just for legal reasons, or just that the service won't fit on a laptop just because it uses too much memory. So again, we realised that we needed to set up another environment for remote workers. So we duplicated the dev environment, changed a few things, spoofed the user data service so it's not giving out protected data over the internet, and everything was good for a little while. This is our server rack. It's great. State of the art, 1998. The only problem with this setup is that the cleaner keeps pulling out the power cord every now and again, and we have a data outage. And that wouldn't have been a problem, but somebody left the door to the basement open, and one of our customers saw that we were using this as our data center, and for some reason they wanted us to deploy to AWS rather than just having it on a perfectly safe hardware in our office. So we then had to duplicate the live environment again. When you're deploying stuff to AWS, probably going to be using AWS services rather than your own backup services. And everything was good for a little while. We've already got 7 different config blocks. All of them are unique. Is this actually a good thing? No, this is not a good thing. This causes problems. The first problem is that whenever you need to change your config setting, you normally need to change it in multiple places. This leads to people forgetting to change a setting, and mistakes can happen. The next problem is that when you've got like 2 config blocks, there's no record of whether changes are deliberate or not. So you can say you've got two different config blocks. One's got one setting like this, the other one's got a setting like this. You can't tell if that changes, that difference is meant to be there, or whether somebody's just gone in, or whether it's meant to be there, or whether somebody's gone in, changed it over here, but forgotten to change it over here, and it's a mistake. And you semantically you just can't see what an particular environment is trying to do. So like with those 7 examples, it's not too bad. But if you want to just go in and say, what does the UX testing environment do? You've normally got to read through a huge list of things and just try and figure out all of them. And the last problem is that setting up a new environment is not trivial. When you, in real applications, when you've got like 20 or 30 or maybe 100 things to set for a config block, people just won't want to set new ones up. So this becomes a problem when UX designers say, hey, we want to change this, we want to have a new environment for testing this particular thing. Developers will turn around and say, we don't really want to do that, it's a lot of work. Can you just use the dev environment to just hack the code a little bit? And that's a problem because people need to have environments specific for their use case to be able to do their jobs. So the solution for this is to use granular config blocks. Instead of just using big blocks of config, split it up into separate chunks that set the particular things for each environment. Each chunk will then have a semantic meaning, and then you allow people to combine them however they want. There is an example library that I've written that I use. It's really well documented, I have to say that. And it's written in PHP, so I'm obligated to include the slide. So basically the idea is, you have, if you want to, don't have to, you have a default config block that you set, if possible, you set sensible defaults for some of the settings. But then after that, you, in each of the pieces of the config, you only set the pieces of config that each thing cares about. So for the remote one, the only thing that actually cared about was to not use the user authentication service, which isn't allowed to be used off-site. For the UX research one, the only thing it cares about is tweaking which UI is used for the sign-up process to allow the UX guys to, allows the UX guys to set that one and use it to however they want. And then the magic happens. So instead of just using a particular block like dev, you allow people to choose, I want the dev remote UX research environment settings, which means apply the dev remote UX research settings in that order. And just in case code is a bit more simple to read than words are, this is the slide that's got the typos on, by the way. Should be one with default at the start, and it should say UX research, not testing. So you just basically set the dev settings, merge in the remote settings, merge in the UX testing settings, and it just puts them all together in the correct order. And this is the other side. So the benefits this gives is that adding a new specific environment becomes trivial. If you want to add a specific environment, you only need to set the single piece of config that you want to set, add it to the chain of things that are being applied at the end, and it will just override it all. When you actually go back to, let's go back to here, when you go back to read what each thing is setting, it becomes obvious that the UX research config chunk, the only thing it cares about is setting this. Instead of having to read a list of 30 things, you normally just have one or two things in each config block to read, and it's clear that this block just cares about this. If you do use default settings, or if you do use default settings, most of the time you normally only have to set stuff in one place rather than it being duplicated in every block that's using that default setting. So that means that most of the time, if you want to go in and change a default thing that's used everywhere, you only need to change it in one place. Makes it far less likely that you're going to have errors in your config. But the main benefit is that setting up a new config becomes almost trivial. Basically, you take the environments, or take an environment that you're already using, change a new config block. Add a new config block to override the particular setting that you care about, and add it to the chain of config blocks that get set. This just makes it really easy to set up new environments, and you don't have to have a big discussion about whether it's worth doing all the development time to add that, or whether it's going to become too much of a management issue managing multiple config blocks. And the other thing is, so when in the talk I just described 7 different blocks, which 7 factorials, not a huge number. In real systems where you've got 10 or 15 different environments going on, 15 factorial actually starts to be a significantly large number, which you wouldn't want to manage by hand. I can't see the time. How much time do I have? Cool. That's most of the talk. I think I'm just about time, but just one more thing before I fall over is, if you can, store config in code. It's great. A lot of people just use JSON or YAML or other static stuff. And it's just not powerful enough to store config in a really usable way. If you store, so the tool I use, it basically is PHP code. You can do things like this. When you set the default block, or any block, you can use a class constant. My IDE will detect any typos I have in the class constant, and it will tell me about them straight away. It also allows me to use these things called functions, which are really useful. Instead of just having to come up with some magic syntax for a config file, you can just use a function that comes with the programming language that you use. So that on this one, I just wanted to have a unique version number to be used with each deploy that I have. So I have a function that generates a string which is just the unique second that deploy happened at. It also means that I can do things like figure out what the absolute path is for where the application is being deployed to, without having to have magic quotes absolute path in the config language. It also has these amazing things called variables, which are really useful. So I use Librato stats to collect stats, but it just needs a unique name per environment that's being deployed to. So I have my app name, and then I can do things like string concatenation at the end. Instead of having to duplicate the site name in all of the settings, I can just concat the thing that's being deployed to with the site name, unique name for each one. That's it.